Everybody, today we're going to work on the Snowplace Tiling Scene from the Feeling Festive Bella Box. The Feeling Festive Bella Box is still available. It's available as a digital download and as the physical box. I'll link everything for you below. I am working with materials from the physical box, so my fabrics will match what's given in the instructions. This is a 7-part project. There's 6 tiles. Part 7 is assembly. We're going to work through the whole project. The one thing I'm not going to do is attach a rope to the back. There's instructions on how to do that here. Instead of attaching rope to the back, I'm going to use some of this 3/4 inch red gingham ribbon. This is by Stitching with the Housewives. I'll link this below. It's just a regular ribbon. I'm going to attach a few pieces to the back. Usually what I do is I grab a length, I attach the loop, I have the 2 loose ends, and then you can tie it onto things. So you can tie it onto a quilt ladder, onto a display stand, whatever you have handy. So I'll show you how to attach that. I have all my fabrics cut and prepped. You need fusible on the back of all the background pieces, the house pieces, and the door fabric. If we're working on it and any more fusible comes up, I'll make sure to point that out. There's a lot of thread for this one. I have mine in my fabric wrapped rope bowl. I have a video on how to make that. I'll link that below. I'm using Floriani, Simthread. I think there's one new bro thread in here, and there was one specialty Sulky thread that came in the Bella box. Here's the number for that in case you don't buy the box and you buy the digital file. And I'll see if I can find a link to this below. This is a glitter thread. I've never tried working with these glittery threads before, so we'll see how that goes. And you'll also need a water-soluble thread for your bobbin. Here's the one that I'll be using. I did color conversions for my threads. If you have the same brands of thread that I have, here's all the color numbers. As we're working through the project, I'll call out the color name from the instructions. For example, if we need a color charcoal, I'll refer to it as charcoal, and then I'll show you my thread color as we're working through the project. I also have a couple pair of scissors. These are Kimberbell scissors. We've got the curved applique scissors and the snips. For needles, I'm going to start out with this regular Schmetz Embroidery 7511 needle. If for any reason we have to change, I'll make sure to let you know. This project is made in a 5x7 hoop. I still have some of this nice light mesh cutaway pre-cut left. I don't think Kimberbell is making this anymore, but you can buy the light mesh cutaway on a roll. I have a couple of 5x7 hoops, so I've loaded my light mesh cutaway into 2 hoops so we can get started. Get your stabilizer in your hoop, hand tighten, screwdriver tighten. Let's head over to our machine. I'm on a Baby Lock Meridian. My files are on USB. I did have a question about what's holding my instructions. It's a folding metal book stand. You can look online and on Etsy. There's all different kinds of book stands. This is very inexpensive, adjustable. You can see you can change how this sits. That's what I'm using. And on the side of my machine, I have additional ports for USB, so I'm not constantly using the USB port. That's part of the machine. You plug this in, and this has additional ports. It's taped on with some what's called label tape. You can peel it off. It won't damage the machine. Inexpensive. As they break, like the top one doesn't work anymore, I just move down and I keep using them until they stop working. These are much less expensive to replace than the one on your machine. I highly recommend some kind of external port for your USB. Going to load our files. You may hear some background noise. We're having a little work done on the house, and they've got some heavy equipment out there today. We're working on the Snowplace Tiling Scene, and we need part 1, which is right up here. It's just the one file. We'll go ahead and hit set. In embroidery, we're ready to get started. It does tell you to start with a visible thread, and then it has us switching to a neutral thread. I have a weird yellowy beige off-brand, I don't know where it came from, thread on my machine. I'm going to start with that thread. We're going to start by stitching out the batting placement line. I'm going to pull this towards me. Grab your batting. Mine is cut at 5 by just a little bit over 7. It should completely cover the placement line. You want to check all sides, top, bottom, each side. Make sure it's covered. And I'm going to go ahead and add a small piece of tape to the top. And then we're going to stitch the batting tack down line. Once your batting is tacked down, you want to trim everything that's outside of the tack down line. Next, we're going to stitch out a background fabric placement line. To grab your background fabric, it's a light color fabric. It has the fusible. Make sure you have the right side up and make sure there's nothing caught underneath the fusible. There's no like lint, dog hair, cat hair, anything like that that's going to be visible through the project. You need to cover the placement line. You can see this covers the hoop, so that's not an issue. If you like, you can add a piece of tape. I actually have to tape it to my hoop because it completely covers the hoop. I'll add one piece of tape here at the top, and then we'll go ahead and tack this down. We're going to start on our applique. It still shows this in a neutral thread. We're going to stitch the house placement line. Grab your house one fabric and you want to make sure you cover that placement line. I'm going to add a couple pieces of tape and then we'll go ahead and stitch the tack down. Again, sorry for any background noise. They're out there pounding down some dirt today. It's pretty loud. Let's stitch the tack down. Going to want to remove the tape, trim everything that's outside of the tack down line, and then we're going to switch to the brown color. I picked a golden brown color. I'm going to go ahead and put this on my machine for the next step. I've got my brown color on my machine. The next two steps are done in brown. I'll go ahead and run them together. We're going to stitch the house satin outline and the roof satin detail and satin outline. Switch to the color cream and we're going to stitch the tree fill. Once your tree's stitched out, we're going to switch to gray. I pulled a light gray and a dark gray. I think I'm going to go with the lighter gray. I think the dark gray would just look way too dark for that. I'm going to switch my thread to the gray and stitch out the aspen tree details. Next, we're going to switch to the color mint and we're going to stitch out the snowflakes. Going to switch to white and stitch out the window fill. Next, we're going to switch to teal and stitch out the window detail and satin outline. My teal is a little more greeny minty probably than your teal, so whatever color you like, use that for your window. That's it for this block. I'm going to take this off my machine and we'll do all the trimming for all the blocks together later. Let's load our next tile. This is the one that says Snowplace Like Home. The beginning steps are the same. I'm going to run them together. The batting placement, tack down trim, fabric placement, and fabric tack down. 5x7 hoop, light mesh cutaway. I've lined up all my little threads in order to make it easy for me. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm using my neutral thread again for these first steps. Once your fabric is tacked down, you're ready to start working on this block. This is a thread work block, meaning there's no fabric, no applique. This is all stitching. The first 3 steps we just did. We're going to do aspen tree fill in cream, aspen tree detail in gray, and then we're going to do some snowflakes in mint. I'll go ahead and run all that together because we just did that in the previous block. This block has a lot of long stitch outs. So if you have another project like a punch needle project, maybe you're a cross stitcher, maybe you're sewing a quilt, it's great to have a second project ready while this is stitching out. We're up to new stuff. We're going to switch to brown, or if you want this in a different color, you can pick whatever color you want. We're going to stitch out the words Snowplace Like Home. This is another long stitch out. We're going to switch to gold. We're going to stitch out the bird legs and beak detail. Switching to red to stitch out the bird body fill. Next, we're switching to burgundy. We're going to stitch out the bird belly and the top feather details. Switch to charcoal. We're going to stitch the bird eye. This block is done. I'm going to take this out of the hoop and set it with the other one. We're going to start on tile number 3. That one has one of our ice skaters. Let's start on tile number 3. We've got the one ice skater kind of with one leg up in the air. That's tile number 3. This one right here. Same steps before to start, neutral thread on the machine. I'll go ahead and move through the duplicate steps. Once your fabric is tacked down, we're going to start working on our applique and embroidery. The first thing we're going to do is stitch out the house placement line. You can continue working with your neutral thread. You want to cover your placement line with your fabric, stitch the tack down, and then trim any fabric that's outside of the tack down line. Once you've trimmed your fabric, we're going to stitch the door placement line. This is still with your neutral thread. Cover the door placement line with your door fabric, stitch the tack down line, and then trim the fabric. Once you've got that door trimmed, we're going to switch to the color mint and we're going to start working on the river. We're going to start by stitching out a placement line. The placement line is stitched. I've got my River 3 fabric here. It's the longer, skinnier piece. Very pretty fabric in this kit. It's got a nice shimmer to it and it doesn't come off like glitter. We want to stitch the tack down and then trim. Next we're going to stitch the river decorative outline, and then there's some little squiggles. Those are details in the snow. Once that's done, we're stitching another tree. We've done this twice already. Stitch out your aspen tree fill and the tree details. Once your tree and the tree details are stitched, you want to switch to brown. We're going to stitch the house satin outline. Going to switch to pink. We're going to stitch out the satin outline that goes around the door. Next is white. We're going to stitch out the 2 windows on the sides. You want to switch to the color teal. We're going to stitch the window details, outlines, and it's going to stitch out a little doorknob. Switch to navy. We're going to stitch out the pants. Switching to gray, we're going to stitch out the ice skate blade detail. Switch to cream, we're going to stitch out the ice skate bill. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the shirt, and they have that as teal. My teal is really, really close to this fabric color, so I went to my thread wall and I pulled another color. I pulled a pink. I'm going to use that for the shirt. I thought I hit the on button, but I didn't. So here's my nice pink shirt. Next is the shirt collar. They have that in navy, and since the pants are navy, I'll go ahead and stitch the shirt collar in navy. I think it's going to look more like she's wearing a shirt underneath the jacket. I think it'll look good. That does look good. I like that. In fact, when we get to the hat and the mittens, I think I'm going to stitch those in navy instead. I think that'll look better than the red. The next thing we're going to stitch out is hair fill 1. I've got the gold, which is how it's listed, but if you want to change the hair color, you can always change the hair color. Next, we're switching to what they're calling Skin Tone A. Pick a color you like for skin tone. I pulled Glide Pearl for that. Back to the hair color, we're going to stitch hair fill number 2. This project's really going to go through your bobbins. Make sure you've got several ready. Next, we're going to stitch the hat and the mittens. In the design, they're red. I'm going to go ahead and stitch them in navy. I like the way the navy's looking next to the pink. Next, we're going to stitch the pom-pom. I'm going to do that in the pink that I picked for the jacket. We need to change out our bobbin to our water-soluble thread. Here's the kind that I'm using. I've used it a couple of times before. It works really well. I have the pink thread on my machine. The water-soluble thread bobbin is loaded. We're going to stitch out the hat fringe. That's called the pom fringe. Sorry about that. The pom fringe. Going to slide that over. We're all done with the water-soluble thread. Make sure to change your thread back. You don't want to accidentally leave water-soluble bobbin thread on your machine. That would be bad. I have my regular bobbin back on my machine. I did forget to mention, if you don't have water-soluble, you can use a visible thread, but then when we go to the part where we dissolve the thread, you've got to find that visible thread and clip the threads. Still have the pink on my machine. We're going to stitch the pom-pom tack down. And they called that the center detail instead of the tack down. It tacks it down. We're going to take this over to the table and dissolve the water-soluble bobbin thread. We're at the table. I have a little cap filled with water and a cotton swab. I'm going to flip it to the back, and you just want to get it wet, and the threads will start popping up. You'll start seeing little thread loops. Just go all the way around. See the little thread loops right there? That's how you know it's working. And then we're going to go to the front once this is all dissolved and pull out the fringe. It looks like I got everything. You'll see you've kind of got dots now on the outside, and then a blank space, and then you've got the almost like a solid center. Let's go to the front. I've got some tweezers, and it should pull up relatively easy. If you find that you're pulling and nothing's happening, then you haven't dissolved it all the way through on the back. It comes up really easy. See, like right here, I probably need a little bit more water on the back. That's at the top of the palm. I've got all of that bobbin thread dissolved. You can probably see the watermark. I'm hoping that goes clear after it dries and doesn't leave a water stain. I'm going to take this out of the hoop and set it aside. We're going to go on to number 4. We are on tile number 4. This one looks like it's got 2 trees. This is going to take a while. Those trees take a long time to stitch out. That's this one right here. Let's hit set and let's look at the time. Set embroidery. 29 minutes. I guess not too bad. We're ready to go. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to run all the beginning stuff together because it's all the same. The batting placement and tack down and getting our fabric ready. And then the first thing we'll do together is the river placement line. I have my mint thread on my machine. We're going to stitch the river placement line, and then we'll place our fabric, tack it down, trim it, and stitch the decorative outline, just like the piece of river we did on the previous tile. So I'll go ahead and run all that together. Switch to brown. We're going to stitch out the tree trunk fill. Next, we're going to switch to light green. We're going to be working on the tree. Originally, this was the color I picked for the light green. I'm going to switch to this one. When you take the green fabric and lay it out, if I put this next to it, that almost looks neon. This looks better. It's a very close match, a little bit lighter. It'll show the embroidery detail without it being so bright. So I'm switching from that one to this color if you're using Floriani. I've got my new light green on, and we're going to stitch the placement line for the tree. Grab your tree fabric. This does not have fusible. I'm going to lay it down and see how it looks. It looks okay. It's a little bit on the thinner side, but I don't think it needs the fusible. Checking to make sure I've covered all my placement lines, and then we're going to tack it down and trim. Next, we're going to stitch out the pine tree decorative outline. Next, we're going to stitch out the garland details on the tree. We're going to use this specialty thread, the Poly Sparkle thread. It's a Sulky thread. This was included in the Feeling Festive Bella Box. I've never used a glitter thread before on my embroidery machine. It seems pretty strong. My machine is already slowed down. I don't run it at full speed because it just keeps breaking threads, so it's already slowed down a little bit. Let's put this on and give it a try. Fancy threads on. Here we go. And we've got a thread break. That's what I was afraid of. It got pretty far. It's all, oh dear, it's all tangled. I've got a big, giant thread wad in here. That's not going to be fun to get out. I was watching this stitch and I noticed it just didn't look sparkly at all. Well, that's because all the sparkly was piling up and piling up and piling up and piling up like this inside my machine. So I'm going to see if I can pick this out, and I'm just not going to use the sparkle thread. I'm going to use this color instead. This is a nice shiny gold tone thread. I think that's fine. This is all I was able to get out after about 10 minutes. I'm just going to stitch over it with the new color thread. I'm back to the beginning of the garland stitch. Let's hope this goes okay. Did you notice it went all the way up and all the way back? I think that saved it. Let's have a look at it. It looks great. You'd never know there was a problem. Love it. If you've ever used the metallic thread and had success with it, let me know what you did. I don't think I'll be doing that again. We're going to switch to the color cream. I'm going to have to buy another spool of this by the time we're done. We're going to do 2, not 1, but 2 trees, and then the tree details. Switch to mint. We're going to stitch out the 2 snowflakes, and that's the last thing for this tile. This one is done. I'm going to take this out of the hoop and set it aside, and we'll go on to tile number 5. Let's load tile number 5. 4 down, 2 to go. This one also has a Christmas tree or winter tree in it. This one right here. Same steps to start. I'll run it together. Your fabric is tacked down. You want to put your mint thread on your machine. We're going to do river placement, river tack down, and decorative outline. We've done all that before. I'll go ahead and run all that together. Once the river decorative stitch is done, we have a couple of snowflakes to stitch out in mint. Switch to white. We're going to stitch out the skate line detail. Next is brown for the tree trunk. Next is light green. We're going to stitch out the tree. We're going to do a placement line, put down the fabric, tack it down, trim it, and do the decorative outline. We just did a tree, so I'll run all that together. Next, we're going to stitch out the star details on the tree. I'm going to use this thread again instead of the metallic. I'm going to switch to navy, and we're going to stitch out the pant leg. We're going to use gray and stitch out the skate blade, and then cream and stitch out the skates. This one is done. I'm going to take this off my machine, reload our stabilizer, and we're going to stitch out number 6. That's our last tile. We're on tile number 6. This is the last one. Let's go ahead and get that file loaded, and then I'll run the first few steps together just like I've been doing because it's the same for each one of these. Once your fabric has tacked down, switch to mint. We're going to stitch the placement line for the river fabric. This piece of river fabric is the biggest piece of river. It covers almost the entire block. I think it will cover the entire block. Go ahead and put that piece down, then we'll stitch the tack down lines. Once that's tacked down, we want to trim away this piece here, this upper corner, and then the outside. Once you've got that trimmed, we're going to stitch the decorative outline. Switch to navy. We're going to stitch out the pants. We need our gray for the ice skate blades, and then the cream for the ice skates. Going to change to white and stitch out the skate line detail. Next, we're stitching out the shirt. I originally pulled this color. I think it's going to stand out way too much. The color they call for is mauve, however you want to say that. So instead, I'm going to use this color. This is the burgundy. I used this on part of the cardinal that was in the tree. I think this will look good. I'll use this instead. Switch to whichever color you want to use for skin tone. I'm using this Glide Pearl color. Next is brown for the hair, or whatever color you'd like to use. Next, we're stitching out the hat and gloves. I'm going to change the colors. They have these as light green and dark green. I'm going to use the navy again for the hat and for the gloves. And then for the trim on the hat, the pom-pom and the brim, I'm going to use the burgundy that I used for the shirt. This block is done. I'm going to take this over to the table, get it out of the hoop, and then we're going to trim and assemble our tiling scene. I've got all my blocks. Now we have to trim them. It tells us to trim close to the tack down line on all of the blocks. If you flip these to the back, the tack down line is right here, and then there's another line of stitching right here. This is a 1/4 inch apart. We're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So when we trim this, it can be on the stitch line or next to the stitch line. The thing that's going to be important when we put these blocks together is to sew on this line and to make sure, I'm going to just grab another random block, that when we're putting them right sides together after they're trimmed and we go to sew, that when we're at our machine, this line is matching with this line, and then any of the blocks that go top to bottom, like this one and this one, we'll have to be extra careful making sure we're matching up the elements of the blocks between the blocks so that it looks consistent. When I looked at these blocks, I thought I'd try measuring them. I was hoping we might be able to use an orange pop ruler. There's not a size for that though. Going across, it's 5, and then this direction, it's 6 3/4, so we don't have an orange pop ruler for this. You have to decide if it's easier for you to see this line from the front or to see it from the back. In this case, I think it's easier on the front because this is white bobbin thread and all of this looks white. I'd say line up your ruler right along the stitch line. Be careful. If you're worried about trimming right on the stitch line, you can go just outside the stitch line. Just remember, when we go to put this together, we're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You may not be able to use a guide foot. It might not match perfectly. Another option is from the back. Here's the line where we're going to trim, and then here's the next line of stitching. They're a 1/4 inch apart. If you have a ruler like this is a Creative Grid 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. They have a 1/4 inch mark on the ruler. You could line up your 1/4 inch mark on this line of stitching and then trim there, and then you'd know you have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Either way would work. I think I'm going to trim these from the front, and I'm going to go with a slightly skinnier ruler. It'll be a little bit easier for me to see. Sometimes when the ruler covers the whole thing, it's a little harder to see, and then there's also a lot of reflection. So I'm lining up with the stitch line, and then I'm going to go just a little bit on the other side of it. So I'm not going to cut right on the stitch line. I want to be a little bit more careful with these. So when I look at it, you can still see some of the stitching there, and that's fine. When I go to put these together, I'm going to be looking at this line of stitching on the back. All I'm going to do is trim all of my blocks. So I'm lining up the ruler right on the stitching, and then I'm just pushing it a little bit past. I just want to make sure that I don't cut it too short. Just like that. I'm going to do that for all of my blocks, so go ahead and do that off camera. I've got everything trimmed. We're going to start with tile 1 and tile 2. Did you see this? I'm sorry, I'm really laughing at myself. This is just way too funny. I grabbed the wrong color. Look at my tree. It's 2 different colors. I didn't grab the cream. I don't know what I did to this poor tree here. Well, my tree is going to be extra special. What can I say? I'm using the Bella Box, so I don't have any of this fabric. I can't believe I did that. That is just too funny. It's been raining and dark, and I don't have the best light in here, and we've got construction going on. Oh my goodness, that's too funny. So my tree, no matter how good I get at lining it up, it's just gonna look weird. Oh well. Let's see if the rest of my trees match. These match, those look good, and that's it. I don't know how I did that. I think that's this color, the face color. I pulled the wrong color. Oh my goodness. Alright, well, let's put it together anyway. What the hey? We want to try and match everything up. Oh goodness. That's just too funny. I've got pins here. You can line everything up and try and get really close. I noticed the color difference when I was trimming, but I thought it was just the bad lighting and reflection or something. But wow, I win the award for really bad mistake today. I'm going to try and pin these right on top of each other, and then I'm going to look at the satin stitching on the house and make sure those are lined up. Now I can't run my pin through that. That's too thick. I have these thin, I think they're called magic pins. You can iron on them. They don't melt. I'll just run a pin off to the side. And these two, you know what? It's going to be the only one in the world like that. And it's still going to look good. I just bent my pin. That's what I'm talking about. These are really thin pins. That looks pretty good. I'm going to take the Snowplace like home and this bottom tile here, the ones where the trees actually match, and I'm going to match these as well, and then I'll sew them both at the sewing machine, and we'll see how well I do matching them up. I'm going to do the same process. Look at the design, match up the design, get it pinned, and then when I go to sew this on my sewing machine, I have Aurifil Color 2000. It's a light beige, it's a neutral. I'm going to sew right along that line. Alright, let's have a look. I haven't looked yet. Really good. Oh, that came out great, despite the fact that my tree is a different color. Let's get a close-up. Pretty good. I haven't ironed these yet. I'll do a press open on the back because we're going to be attaching the back and doing stitch in the ditch. So I think if you pin them and then sew right along that line. I just went really slow. It'll come out okay. I actually thought of something for this. I took a picture and showed it to a couple people. Nobody noticed this until I pointed it out. My husband said it looks like the bottom half of the tree is in shade from the roof of the house. I think I have a fun creative solution, hopefully to kind of camouflage it, but we'll do that right at the very end. Let's look at the next one. This is the Snowplace Like Home that's got 2 trees. They came out really good. Right there. And right there, they do need to be ironed. When you open them all the way and then press them, you can really tell if they're lined up or not. They're lined up. This tree's a little crooked, but that's the way it's, you know, that's the way it's stitched out. Looks good. We need to make sure that we attach the right bottom piece to the right lock. So this one next, and this one. You don't want to do this. That would look really weird. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the first 2. For this one, the crucial point is making sure the leg matches. So put them both together, watch where the leg is, get it nice so they overlap, they're touching each other, right sides together. And I'm going to put a pin on each side just to make sure that it stays together. And then the rest I can hold together at the sewing machine, double checking, making sure I've got the right thing pinned. And this one, you want to look at the river. So I'll match this, I'll pin this, and then I'll bring them back and show you. Let's look at these 2. Pretty good. Here's the leg. That came out good. And the lake. Looks good. This one looks like it could have gone that way, maybe a thread's width, but I am not changing that. We are going to put these 2 pieces together. When you put them together, the only things that match are here and here, the 2 pieces of the river. So I would do the same thing, pin. I'm going to press these seams open first, but then put them together and pin. Let's have a look. Fingers crossed. Yes, haha, looks good. There's the river there, seam, the river there, and my seam matches pretty nicely. It's a, wow, it's a touch off, or no, it just needs to be ironed. Wonderful, that came out great. I'm going to flip this over. See how these are pressed open? I'm going to go ahead and press this middle seam open, and then we'll talk about doing the stitch in the ditch. Everything is pressed. It looks really good, aside from this tree over here. It came out great. Got all our seams pressed open. Got the backing fabric here. It's a stripe. I clearly didn't cut it. It says 16 by 17. I guess you have to decide which way you want it to go. There are other projects in this Bella box. I've already cut the binding, so I know I don't need more for that. And I don't think we need this fabric for anything else. We don't use it here. And then there's a leather snap tray, and there's some tags. This doesn't have it, and this doesn't use it. So I'm okay with just winging it, so to speak. I'm gonna take my backing fabric. Right side is down, so the wrong side is up. Here's my tiling scene. Wrong side, wrong side. So wrong sides together. I'm going to scooch it toward the corner. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and do the stitch in the ditch. What that means, if you've never done that before, you stitch right here in the seam, or as close to as possible. Sometimes I get a little bit off to the side. That's okay. I would pick an off-white thread for this, since there's so much off-white in the background. You need to stitch here, here, and here, and then we'll trim this. We'll do the binding and the ribbon and label. I've done all the seams. Let's flip it to the back. You can see the seams. We've got one here, and one here. What I need to do is trim away the extra before I can do my binding. I've got everything trimmed away. I also went around and just checked to make sure it was nice and square. We're going to make some hanging ribbons, and I'm also going to attach a label. This label says "Experience the joy of creativity." It comes from these woven tags. I think they sell these on Kimberbell's website. I'll look for it and provide a link below. I've got my binding cut. I like to machine bind. I'll link a video below showing some of this in detail rather than moving the camera to set up. I've done a couple videos where I show binding in extreme detail. I'll stitch it to the back. This is also when I'll attach the label. I'll fold that in half. I like to put it in the bottom corner somewhere underneath the binding, and then when the binding comes around to the front, your label is attached. I want to make some hang ties. I'm just going to grab a length of ribbon. That looks pretty good. Let me measure it for you. It's 24 inches. I'm going to make 2 of these. I know where I want to tie this. We have a double oven, and right now I have a fall item on display. I want to take that down and then tie this instead. Go ahead, trim that. The handle isn't super skinny, it's not super fat, you know, it's about like that. I want to make sure I have enough to tie and then to make a nice looking bow. I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to sew the folded edge in with the binding. I want to make sure that I do this at the top. So here's the top of my piece. I could measure, but I usually just eyeball things. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have my pins handy. I already put my pins away. I'm just going to grab some clips. And then what you can do, you can measure. It's 2 3/4 inches from the outside, so I'll measure 2 3/4 inches and make sure they match. Maybe about there. Boy, I'm close. Just a little bit. There we go. And then to keep myself from catching this as I sew, I'm actually going to get some Kimberbell paper tape and tape that down. Got my paper tape. You don't want this coming loose and getting caught as you're doing your binding. Now I need to put my tag back in. Before I attach this, I'm actually going to write my name and the date on the back, and that part will be laying against the back, so it won't be like right here standing out. You'll see the nice part of the tag, but I'm going to write some details on this part. I have a Pentel gel roller for fabric. These work really well. It's a permanent fabric marking pen. I wrote what I wanted on the back. I'm going to put that right about there. I'm going to add a pin, and then I'm going to do my binding. I'll put a video that shows how to do the binding, where you machine bind, how to fold the corners, how to bring it around to the front. I'll link that below. Label on. I've got the binding on. Got my nice ribbons here, so it's ready to hang. And if I hadn't messed up the tree, it would be done and this would be the big reveal. But let's see what it looks like so far. Very nice. Look at that. Let me turn it sideways. Even with the mismatched thread on the tree, which I actually think is showing up a lot more on camera, it's really hard to distinguish in person. This is so cute. I just love it. Now I do have a couple of ideas for this. I've got to go diving into my craft bin, and if you've been paying attention, you've noticed that these sleeves are different than the sleeves from when I started, because this is day 2. This is going to bring it over to day 3. So I will be back tomorrow, which will be immediate by the magic of video. Let's talk about the fix I came up with for this. I thought of a couple things. One of the things I thought of was maybe tying a ribbon around it, but I didn't think that that would look really balanced. We do have the dimensional pom-pom here. So I looked online and I found some mini wreaths. These are so cute. They came in a pack of 24, but I have a mini Christmas tree and I do a lot of crafts, so I'll be able to use them. I'm going to put one right there to sort of distract the eye from the abrupt color change. So we'll put it right by the seam, and then so the whole thing looks a little more balanced. I think I'm going to put one on this tree as well. I thought about putting it on top of the tree, but that looks really weird. If I had a little star button, I might do that on this side, but I don't. So I'm going to get my glue gun. I'm going to use this Sure Bonder Cool Shot. I really like this. My regular glue gun, the big glue gun, is a high temperature glue gun. It's really, really hot. Put a little glue on the back. It's still hot glue. It's just not super duper hot glue. So you have to be careful, just like you would with a regular glue gun. Oh, that looks really cute. Yay. And then let's figure out where to put the next one. Probably also close to the top. I don't know if I want it right by the seam or not. Maybe actually, because if I bring it down here, you start to kind of interfere with that branch. So I'm going to put that one right about there. I don't want them on a line. I don't want it to be too even, which is something that I do a lot just by accident. Oh, I need to get another glue stick. Well, that should be enough to get this to stick. We'll put that right there. Glue strings. And there it is. I really like these. These are really cute. I'll put either a link or a description about these below. You might be able to find something like this in your craft store. You could even put one there. It said they were made for doll houses, which I could see. They're really cute. That would look really cute on the door of a dollhouse. On the back, I have my ribbons. I took the tape off. So what you do is you just put this around wherever you want it to hang. And then you can tie a nice bow. And I love the red and white gingham. It actually matches really well with the little red ribbon there on the wreaths I just put on. Let's do a close-up and then we'll talk about what we're going to work on next. This Bella Box has more projects. This is the Feeling Festive Bella Box. and I have several other things going on my channel. I hope you've enjoyed making this Snowplace tiling scene with me. That was fun. I love the little wreath. Even if you don't mess up your threads, you can add a little detail like that. It just gives it something a little bit special. I love it. Let's talk about what else is going on right now on my channel. I'm hosting a Sweetheart Street Pillow Along. The first video is up. I'll go ahead and link that below, and in the description box there's a link to download your free schedule. Working on this a couple blocks at a time each week so everybody can hopefully fit that in with their busy schedules, and we'll wrap it up before Valentine's Day. I just received my digital files for January's Perfectly Pieced. I am working on a mystery quilt project. I'll link that for you below, and then I'll also work on this month's featured project. I'll do those in two separate videos. When we work on the featured project, we'll take some time talking about how to pick fabrics. Since this is now a digital only version, I'll give you some ideas about how to pick fabrics for this design. For the Feeling Festive Bella Box, I'll keep working on this. We'll work it in throughout the year. I think the next one I'd like to do is the teacup zipper pouch. Let me know what you'd like to see next. We've got the teacup zipper pouch, there's a tag, there's the leather snap tray, and I do have a video on how to embroider on a Kimberbell snap tray. I'll link that below for you as well. And then there's the little pocket. This Feeling Festive Bella Box is still available, digital and physical version. I'll make sure that's linked below. And coming soon, I'll be working on the applique of the month. This is a new monthly subscription Kimberbell is launching. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had a great time, and I hope you enjoy the little wreaths I put on here because of my mistake. Otherwise, I never would have thought about that. I love it. I think it's great. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time.